Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Everyday Equity, Everyday Ways to Make a Change. I'm your host, Pooja the founder of Boundless Awareness. And with me today is someone I am so excited to talk to. Maxine Legall is here from Thrive Inclusively. Maxine, welcome. I'm so happy to meet you. I'm so happy we connected. And it's my honor that you're here. Could you give us a little introduction about yourself and your organization?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, Pooja, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited. I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn. I've seen your videos on YouTube, and I'm like, wow, she
Oh,
has me as a guest. So I'm
that's
pretty excited about that.
that's very kind. Thank you.
So my name's Maxine Legall. I'm the founder and CEO of Thrive Inclusively. I actually started my company last March of 2024. I had worked for years in healthcare, also in the not-for-profit space, and a little bit in the corporate sector as well. And I did a lot of work around cultivating healthy cultures, engaging cultures, bringing people together. I have a background in social work and also patient experience. I've also done work in DEI. And so I thought to myself, I've spent a long time doing these things for other organizations. What would happen if I tried this for myself? And
Yeah.
really created a company where I could go out and continue to do the things that I'm passionate about, the things that I love. And so, what my company really aims to do is help people reach their full potential and also help organizations reach their full potential too. What does that look like? I think for individuals, it's really about taking care of ourselves, um, being self aware, striving to be our best self, investing in ourselves through coaching and sponsorship and mentorship, creating a support network around ourselves so we're not alone. These are things that we just need to continue to do on a day-to-day basis. And for organizations, what does that look like? Well, it's about really working on your culture. Your organization has a culture, whether you work on it or you don't. Right? So if you say, no, our culture is fine, what are you doing around it? Nothing. Okay. Well, you have a culture. What is that culture telling your employees? And what can you do to cultivate that culture? How can you bring people in? How can you cultivate leaders who create a culture where people want to stay and they want to grow and they want to develop? So that's really what I do. Can you hear
Yeah,
me okay?
yeah, I love it. And so many people don't think, or so many organizations and companies, and let's say, I'm a former lawyer, so I think a lot about law firms, and they think, yeah, we don't worry too much about the culture here. We don't, think about that
Mm,
too much. And like you said, whether you like it or not, you have a culture.
you have one.
So if you're not intentionally building it and cultivating it,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
then you're apt to get into trouble because we live in a society where it's just normal to all of this oppression is very normal. So we're bound to mirror it if you don't intentionally cultivate it.
And we live in a society where people are struggling. We're living in a society where people are getting different messages and experiences that impact them as individuals. And they come into work and they bring that with them. So, what do we need to do within our workplaces and our workspaces to help people along with that
Yeah.
so that they can be their best selves? Because I guarantee if people are working for your organization and they're their best selves, that's going to make your organization a great place to work because people are coming in and they feel cultivated, they feel cared for, and they can be their best self when
Mm.
when they're doing what they love.
What do you think about firms? I often hear, well, there's two things. I think we often think in a binary that it's either good or bad, or yes or no, and we forget what's in the gray area. And when I talk in workshops and talk to people and leaders, and I say something very similar. There will always be a much junior person or person who doesn't have like that leadership who says, you know what, I don't want my work to be where I bring my full self. Like I'd like to
Mhm,
compartmentalize. Like my home is where that is, my issues or whatever that I have going on in my life, and I don't bring, or I don't want to hear other people's stuff.
mhm.
And I'm wondering, like, how you kind of dispel this myth that there's a binary that like you have to bring your full self to work or you have to leave your full self at home. And there's so much in between.
Yeah.
There's room for people to bring their full selves,
Yeah.
and those who don't feel like who want to compartmentalize, which is very natural,
Right.
for them to do that too.
Right.
How do you respond to firms and companies or cultures that are like,
I think
we're
the
not
answer,
a family, you know?
right. I think the answer is yes. I think that everyone has a perspective, and we need to lean in and understand what that perspective might be. You're going to work for people who want to compartmentalize. This is who I am at work. This is who I am when I go home. And
Yeah.
you meet them. You meet them. When I was in social work school, one of the things that they would always teach us is you start where the client is, right? You start where the customer is.
Yeah.
And then you move from there. You don't sit down with the client and say, this is where you need to be. I'm going to make you get there.
Mm,
No, you start with, let's start with where you are right now. And then you go on a journey with that person. I think the same thing applies here. I think you're going to encounter people who want to compartmentalize and leave a certain portion of themselves home. And then you're going to encounter people who want to bring it all in. It's a matter of really starting, especially as leaders. I think it's important for us to be able to lean in and understand that different people, different employees, different team members, they come in with different perspectives, different needs, different understandings, different goals, different skills, and different talents. And it's a matter of leaning in and starting where that person is.
mm.
That's what I would say. But because I don't want to be, I want to be careful not to be prescriptive, right, Pooja? And say, no, everyone has to be this way. I don't want to do that, right? At the same time, you want to kind of understand that people are different and there's a diversity to how they want to come into work.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it. I'd love to talk to you about how your journey started. What sparked, you know, why did you enter social work? Even from the way beginning, why did you even go to school for social work? What was important to you? And was there anything that sparked this desire to help?
Wow. I went into social work because I really wanted to help people. I went to SUNY New Paltz, State University of New York in upstate New York, great school, by the way.
Mhm.
And what I learned there was pretty wonderful. I majored in psychology and double minored in sociology and Black studies. And I really developed a desire to help others. I worked at the crisis center. I enjoyed counseling and crisis intervention, and I wanted to continue that. When I got to social work school, I realized that I love the counseling aspect, but I love the large scale, the macro level work as well.
Mhm.
Not just working with people one on one, but what can we do within communities to really create change? And what does that look like? It could be an organization where you're providing that counseling, but do I want to be the person doing the counseling, or do I want to be the person that's looking from a strategic perspective in terms of what that organization can do to really make a difference? And that's when I started to think, I think you want to be a little bit more involved in the larger work and the big picture. When I was in elementary school, and it was, I don't want to say when it was because I don't think people need to know, but a lot of my teachers were folks who had lived through and were very engaged in the civil rights movement. And so they shared a lot of their experiences with us and the change they made and the change that they expected us to make.
Mm,
I wanted to carry that forward. And so I think that's what really made me go the way of social work, if you will.
mm.
But then guess what happened? After social work school, I moved into a couple of different roles where I fell in love with healthcare. And I found that that was also equally important and engaging for me. So it's been like a marriage, if you will,
Mhm.
this concept of helping others, but also being in healthcare as well. And I've enjoyed that journey.
Oh, that's really great. There's some people who are really like grassroots, like on the ground oriented, and there's some people who are really like policy, big picture oriented, meaning like they see it really clearly. And I think that's lovely because I'm more of a grassroots type. And when I think about like big policies or defining them
Of course.
and designing them, it's
Of course.
really intimidating to me.
Yes.
Um, when you've been in several different positions, can you talk about strategies to have different difficult conversations about equity inclusion in all the different positions that you've been in. You know, and even when you talk about the impact that your teachers had on you, for example, that was so impressionable to you and so important. And then we see, like the rollbacks in education that are being proposed right now, or like the danger to our schools right now for our children to have the education that you were able to get. Our children might not be able to receive in the next few years. So when you're thinking about having these difficult conversations, what strategies do you employ? And if you have any examples from the different sectors you've been in.
I'll tell you a story. Maybe about 2 years ago, I was on a panel for an organization that I'm very active in called Healthcare Leaders of New York. It's really folks who do healthcare administration. It's a national organization, but there are chapters in different parts of the country. I'm part of the Greater New York chapter, and I was serving on their diversity committee. And we each year have a mini Congress where we do a panel discussion. And I was asked to be on the panel. And the panel was around really cultivating and developing diverse leaders. And what do healthcare organizations need to do to create an environment where all leaders want to be there, they want to be included, they can grow to their best self. And the term diversity, equity, and inclusion came up. And what I did is they asked the question, but they had DEI embedded in the question. And so I defined what my understanding of DEI was at that moment. And when I was done, then I answered the question. When the panel was over, I had a few friends come up to me that I've worked with over the last several years. These friends were diverse background, right? They did not look like me. And they came up and they said, "Thank you for the definition, because we've never heard anyone explain it the way that you did." And so when you ask me what strategies we need to have difficult conversations about equity and inclusion, I say, I don't know how difficult it is. Just let's start by defining it.
Yes.
To make sure that we understand what it is.
Yes.
And I think that's what we've missed for so long over the last several years, is what is it? And it took me a while, Pooja. To be honest with you, it took me a while to understand it for myself. I'm going to be real with you. And I had to lean in and say, what does it mean? And then once you get an understanding of what it means, you need to be able to explain it to someone else. Because that's how you know. If you can, was it Einstein who said, if you can explain it to a 5-year-old, you know it, right? It's that thing. And so I feel like once we define what it is, I think it stops being this big, scary thing. And it becomes something that, we can lean in on. And then you can say stuff like, is that your understanding of it? Tell me about your understanding. And then there's conversation and dialogue, which is what we need now. More than ever, we need more conversation and dialogue and connecting with everybody, all different types of people, and having conversations. I think that that's what we're missing right now. I hope I answered your question.
I love that. I'm gonna snip that out, and we're gonna use that again, because that's really the key. I mean, once you define something, you're right. And it kind of dispels people's
fear, anxiety,
apprehension, and like, oh, you're gonna tell me about this now. I already know what you're gonna say. And when you break it down and are like, let's start at letter A. What does it mean? What am I talking about? I love, that's such a great technique. It's really smart.
And can I say something else to you? To the extent that we can build relationship on the journey first, so that when you move to having those, that conversation I don't want to have, it's a little easier. I'm not saying it's going to be all great and you'll all agree and everyone will skip away happy. I didn't say that. But I do feel that when we are intentional about building connections with people and building relationship with people, and people who look like us and people who don't look like us, then that allows us to start to have these types of conversations. That doesn't mean you're going to agree. I'm going to agree. We may not agree at all, or we might. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we all have different lived experiences that are going to contradict
Absolutely.
each other's lived experience. Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. There's so much here. Okay. I'd love to ask you, as um, practitioners, we're always, it's like a continuous education. And we all have our different ways of doing it. I was wondering, how do you keep yourself continuously educated, informed,
Good
up to
question.
date, and moving where our
Yeah.
culture is
Yeah.
also moving, like in sync with that?
Yeah. You know what I heard the other day? I heard that within the realm of HR, what they're doing is they're trying to figure out new and exciting ways to train and educate employees. And what they found is for younger employees, they engage more with podcasts. Interesting that we're doing a podcast right now.
Mhm.
They found that if they can give employees 20-minute or 30-minute podcasts that they can listen to on their way to work, it impacts how they learn and they absorb more information. I also learned that regardless of how you may have felt in terms of how this last election turned out, a lot of impact came through podcast. People were listening to podcasts more and more and
Mm,
more. So when you say, how do you educate yourself? One of the things that I have really tried to lean in on is this concept of having a growth mindset, which means that I never really stop learning and things don't really stop changing or evolving either. It changes with time. It changes with generations. I have young children, and they tell me stuff, and I'll say stuff, and they're like, "Mommy, you can't say that," and I'm like, "What? Tell me, I can." You do you understand what I'm saying? So here we are in this moment where things are growing, things are changing. So how do I educate myself, Maxine? You got to adapt a growth mindset. Never be surprised. Keep learning, keep listening. I've started to listen to more podcasts as well, Pooja. Like, I hope people will listen to this podcast and all of your podcasts
mm.
because all of them bring insight and information. We should always be open to learning. That changes everything, whether it's reading, listening to podcasts, watching things that are helpful in our journey. A few of my friends have written books. I've started to read them. I think that's how we challenge our bias and how we continue to grow.
Yeah, that's really great. Find what works out for you. And maybe it's movies or
Yeah.
articles.
One other thing, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I got to bring this home again. I do also think that it's helpful. Like I mentioned HLNY, being a part of a network of professionals, be
Yeah.
it different professionals, where you're constantly around people that rub against you or sharpen you to grow and to be your best self. I think that's also important. I think that if we stay alone and by ourselves, we run the risk of not learning and growing. And so being out there, joining these networks, going to meetings, networking, meeting people that are different from you and having conversations, I think is also integral and important.
Yeah. Yeah. I find so much growth in talking to people who are 20
Mm,
years younger than me.
yeah.
And I feel like I got generations that are older than me, and I that's all set. But the older you get, I think the harder it is to find people like a generation or two below you, and to like get them to talk to you in like a trusting way, and really figure out like they're going through a completely different life experience
They
than
are.
you and I are, and
They
how
are.
we grew up, and the environment that we thought we would be able to enjoy, or the planet that we thought we would be able to
Of
enjoy.
course. Of course.
And these generations are going through so much
Can I put a
turmoil.
comma? Finish what you're saying.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to put a comma on what you said. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I have found that it's helpful to have conversations with multiple generations.
Hmm.
I'm getting to the point where I'm beginning to realize I'm no longer the younger person in the room. I'm not the youngest one. I don't know when it happened. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. I remember feeling young and I had all the great ideas. And then one day I went to an event and I was like, wait a minute, there are people younger than me and they have great perspective. But I also feel like if we can make it our business to connect across different generations, including those that are 20 years younger than us and
Yeah.
those that are older than us, the perspective that you gather and that you gain from that is powerful. So I agree
Mm.
with you wholeheartedly.
Um, I want to spend some time on Thrive Inclusively. And can you talk about how people engage with you, what services they benefit from, um, and some of your like success stories of people that you've engaged with?
So Thrive Inclusively is a consultancy based in New York. We specialize in speaking, consulting. We also specialize in coaching. And so coaching means really helping leaders or individuals, right, as they move along on their career journey and supporting them, uh, talking about things like self awareness, emotional intelligence, understanding their goals and what direction they'd like to move in. For the
Mm,
speaking, I do speaking on a lot of different topics, and I'll probably do speaking on a lot more different topics as time goes on, but
yeah.
focusing on things like imposter syndrome, your inner critic, self care, team building, inclusive leadership. Right. So the speaking talks about, just a plethora of different types of topics that'll help people grow and understand and challenge their mindset and their thinking. And then
Mhm.
in terms of the consulting piece, right? It's a matter of coming into an organization, kind of understanding what their needs are, what their current state is, and where they'd like to grow. What needs to happen within their culture? What do they identify as the problem? Coming in, doing an assessment with them, and then identifying where should the work start and what will the work look like.
Mhm.
You asked about a success story. Can I tell you, to be honest with you, as someone who started a company in March of 2024, the success story for me right now was that I started a company in March of 2024. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. And a lot of what holds us back when we're running a business is our own thinking and mindset. Our companies will be as successful as we believe ourselves to be capable and successful. And so I see that as definitely a win. Another success is, yes, I'm starting to gain traction. People are engaging, people are bringing me in, and it's like, wow, this is great. Like it's a little, I mean, Pooja, I know you run your own company, right? And you've done it for a while, but I'm sure there was a moment in time where it was like, wait a minute, this is wonderful. Like
Yeah.
people are coming to me and they're utilizing my services and it's a benefit to them. I think that that's where that's starting to happen for me. And
Yeah.
it's almost interesting because I was doing it for organizations over the course of my entire career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now when you're doing
Totally.
it for yourself, it's like you're surprised.
Yeah. I love, Maxine, how you start with yourself, because as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and you start your own business, and your business is really like what's in here
Mhm,
and how
mhm,
you're putting it out to other
mhm.
people. So it's not
Absolutely.
like we're making widgets or and like producing something in a factory.
Right.
It's like literally us.
Yes.
And to start with yourself as the first success story, I think is so important for people who are listening that run their own companies. And especially if you don't, and you're like, you've always been in a position where you've been salaried, it's
Right.
such an important thing to kind of like open your mind about, because
Of
like
course. Of
if
course.
someone else like gives you your paycheck and you don't have to earn it yourself, you really it's a very big divide from being an
Very big
entrepreneur
divide.
to
Very big divide.
to
Very
being
big divide.
salaried. And it's a
Yeah.
nice understanding to have of how much it takes for us to do
Right.
every day this
Right.
work.
And I think that there's a common theme, right? I mentioned it in terms of running a business, right? Starting with yourself. But I think that starting with yourself across the board is so important. Whether you work for someone or you work for you, we have to continue to start with ourselves,
Hmm.
to respect and love ourselves, invest in ourselves, so that we show up as our best self. I
Yeah.
think that that's important as well. But yeah, for me, absolutely. I think about the hurdle in moving towards, I'm going to start my own company. But there's someone listening right now or watching this, and there's something on their heart that they want to do, right? Maybe they want to start their own company. Maybe they want to go for that promotion. Maybe they want to do something they've never done. You can do it,
Mm.
but you really have to start with yourself.
Yeah, you really have to have that belief and self-esteem in yourself to do it. Yes, absolutely. Um, I want to ask, we ask everybody, one small act of equity that anyone could start today to start increasing their role in equity and inclusion. If even if they're not in the industry, especially if they're not in the industry.
One small. This is a tough question because you only gave me one. I want to give you like 6.
Okay, you can give me 6.
Okay, great. I go back to what we just started from. I think it starts with self. I think that one of the things that we can do is we can come from a space of humility and understand that we don't know everything and will likely never know everything, but we're all on a journey to learn. And I think that we start with humility first. I think that that's important. I also think that we start from a place of empathy as well. My experience may not be your experience, and vice versa. I can look at you and make assumptions. That's a dangerous thing to do. If we start from a place of humility,
Yeah.
and we start from a place of empathy, that makes a difference. And also, after we've done that, be willing to move, make a commitment. So if you see something, be willing to say something, but I think it really is a matter. And that is true for everything. But I think that humility and the empathy and the visible, making a commitment once you see that something may not be completely right, I think is also equally important. Oh, and one other thing, and we've already talked about this, commit to continuous learning, commit to a growth mindset. Never sit somewhere and say, I know everything there is to know about something. Let me continue to learn. I think that makes a difference as well.
Yeah, I love that. We often talk about this the beginner's mind. No matter how much you know, and I think that goes right to what you said about humility. No matter how much you know, you're always going to be a beginner at something,
It's something so
and
true.
probably something even in our own field.
Of course. Everyone started off as a novice at whatever they're good at now.
Yeah.
And so, you have to recognize that and acknowledge it. Absolutely. I mean, how many podcasts have you done? And you're so. I look at you now. You're in your zone. You're asking these questions. You're good to go. What was it like the first time?
Oh
Right?
yeah, it was nerve-wracking. Yeah. But guests like you make it very comfortable and very
Oh,
easy and very fluid.
thank you.
Thrive inclusively, it includes leadership development, health equity, patient experience, cultural engagement, and organizational transformation. Um, you can find Maxine at thriveinclusively.com. Connect with Maxine on LinkedIn
Please.
at Maxine Legall, coach business consultant.
Yes, please.
At LinkedIn. I got to tell you, when I first reached out to Maxine, it was so she was like, yes, let's meet up. And I was like, yeah, I've been following your work and I love it. So if you are a leader or part of a team and you want to go beyond just simply surviving and really want to get into fostering resilience, emotional intelligence, self-care, growth, and building strong support networks, reach out to Maxine. You have such amazing industry experience. And I think that's the best bedrock when you start creating your own firm, is to have all of that industry knowledge.
Thank you.
Is there any other closing thought or any message that you would like to leave our audience with?
I have a quote that I love that I'd like to leave with the audience, and I want to make sure I get this right as we close off. It's an African proverb, and it says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And I think that that is really what we need to think about. We can go it alone. We can get there. We can go fast. But if we go together, we'll go far. And that's really what I want people to get the message around, especially now. We can all thrive, and we can all thrive together.
Yeah, I
So.
love that. That's perfect. I'm gonna clip that sucker, and we're gonna put that on repeat because that is amazing. That is amazing, and
Thank
that is
you,
so
Pooja.
true, especially now.
Yeah.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Maxine, I could talk to you for like 3 hours. Thank you so much for being here. I know, I was like, why not?
Let's go. Why not?
Keep going. Reach out to Maxine, reach your potential, especially if you're a leader and you're wondering, how am I cultivating my culture? Am I even thinking about
Yeah.
it? Reach
Yeah.
out to Maxine and get some really good advice. Maxine, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us. This has
you.
been such a pleasure.
This has been great. I appreciate it.
And I'll talk to you very, very soon.
All right.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.